Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Then and Now. I'm your host, Brandon Hodnett, and today I'm joined by Michael Greenstone from the class of 1991. Michael was a 1,000-point scorer for Swarthmore men's basketball and earned his bachelor's with high honors in economics. He earned his PhD in economics from Princeton and is now the Milton Friedman Distinguished Service Professor in Economics, the college, and the Harris School, as well as the director of the Becker Friedman Institute and the interdisciplinary Energy Policy Institute at the University of Chicago. He also previously served as the chief economist for President Obama's Council of Economic Advisors, where he co-led the development of the United States government's social cost of carbon. His research has influenced policy globally and focuses largely on uncovering the benefits and costs of environmental quality and society's energy choices, and he also created the Air Quality Life Index. Michael Greenstone, thank you so much for joining me on Then and Now.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Michael, I want to ask you, first of all, how did you arrive at Swarthmore in the first place? Looking back, what brought you to Swarthmore?
That's a good question. I was desperate to play basketball in college, and I wanted to go to a excellent college. And the intersection of those two did not leave many choices. Swarthmore recruited me for basketball, and I actually only applied to one college. I applied early decision, and I got into Swarthmore, and that was it. I guess I should add, I was in the first recruiting class for basketball in probably 10 or 15 years. Me and two others, Chris McCabe and Matt Kennel. There was a little bit of a culture shock as we arrived.
How were you guys able to kind of, turn that culture around and, get to where you were your senior season where you're playing playoff basketball at Swarthmore?
I think it took a lot of work and maybe some dreaming about what might be rather than what was. And actually, I remember very clearly there was a game in St. Louis at WashU where I think WashU, who was very good at the time, must have beaten us by 40 or 50 points or something terrible. And the new guard and the older guard, who I think had not kind of did basketball, maybe certainly tried very hard, but maybe with not quite the same focus. There was, I think, a very loud and altercation is too strong, but disagreement in the locker room. And we didn't get much better that year, but I think we tried to, in our own somewhat awkward way, make clear that having high aspirations is not a bad thing. Yeah. And then there was a coach who brought in, new recruiting classes. Like next year, Scott Gibbons came, who ended up being, for a time, the leading scorer in Swarthmore history, and Rob Ruffin, who was an excellent football player, an excellent basketball player, came, and we, got more talented, and slowly the culture started to change.
What would you say were some of your favorite memories on the basketball court, or just being part of the basketball team at Swarthmore?
Yeah, I think my senior year was really kind of a highlight. We went from, I think my freshman year, I think we were arguably the worst team in the country. And senior year, actually we started out not very well, not very good. And even then too, there was like a little bit of a internal friction. Was it okay to dream to try to go to the NCAA tournament or to try and win the division, or should we just kind of be satisfied with how things were rolling out? And there too, there was something came to a head in the fall of senior year, and after that kind of friction, like we just kind of took off. And those were some of my favorite memories certainly at Swarthmore, and some of my favorite memories ever. We really start to play tremendous and do all these things that we've kind of been thinking about and dreaming about for many years, and beat schools who we had never beaten before. And it was just like this element of this group of people who came together every day and practiced together, and change clothes next to each other in a small, locker room with rusty lockers. probably got on each other's nerves a fair amount. But some kind of strange bond happens from doing that. And it was just this terrific feeling where everyone was in on it together and everyone was fully committed, and it was wonderful.
You scored 1,000 points in your time at Swarthmore. Do you remember crossing that, reaching that milestone?
Oh, I do, because my brother played for Haverford College,
Hmm.
and I think the coach was anxious that I get past 1,000 before the playoffs started. And I think Haverford was our last regular season game of the year. And I took a three-pointer. My brother was guarding me, and fouled me, and the three-pointer went in, and I got a free throw, and I got 1,000 points there. So
Oh
yes,
wow,
I do remember that.
that's incredible. Do you remind your brother of that still, or
Some things are just better left unsaid.
okay?
But I do remember it.
Yeah.
I suspect he does too, but we don't talk about it.
Okay. Now, as a student at Swarthmore, you studied economics. What were your class? Do you have any memories of your classes there, of your professors there, and how kind of they influenced who you are today?
Yeah, Swarthmore was just an unbelievable experience for me, and particularly in the following way. I think I was probably like on a track to going into law or going into business, which I would have been perfectly happy to do. And but something strange, and where I was, going to be, could get good grades. Everyone at Swarthmore could get good grades, but not like deeply engaging with the material. And then something strange happened, which is like this, like, I don't want to overstate it, but like intellectual awakening happened. And I kind of found that like learning for learning's sake and curiosity, when you didn't, answer wasn't going to be in the back of the chapter, but you had to go find it or produce the answer yourself, even, that was okay. And I really grew to love it in a way that I didn't expect. And it kind of completely altered the course of my life. There's a couple professors who stand out in my mind, Bernie Safran and Rob Hollister, both of whom were in the economics department. Bernie Safran passed away a few years ago, and there's a lecture in his honor, which actually I was fortunate enough to give a few years back. And I think they didn't quite know what to make of me, because here I was at this small liberal arts college. Like, there was obviously no professional prospects for me as a basketball player, but I was inordinately devoted to it. And I remember Professor Safran, and to a lesser degree Professor Hollister, in not so polite ways, saying, you're spending too much time on sports. You should really focus on work more. But I guess they put up with my interest in basketball, and they kind of guided me into this path where they got me my first job after college, and then helped get me into graduate school. I owe an incredible debt to them and to Swarthmore, and in particular the honors program, where a lot of this growth in myself happened.
So, just kind of quickly, after Swarthmore, where did life take you? From then to where you are today.
Well, so I thought I was going to go to law school, and I actually applied to law school, and I was on I deferred it for a year. I applied during my senior year, and I worked in this job in Washington that Professor Safran and Professor Hollister got me. And there I really concluded, holy smokes, there's all these great questions about the world out there, and they don't actually have very clear answers, and maybe I could help contribute to that. So once I decided I wanted to go to graduate school, since I hadn't been on that track, I had to kind of improve my math skills, is maybe the way to say it. And so I quit my job. I moved to Philadelphia. I enrolled in classes at Drexel, and took all these math classes that I had never taken in college. And then on the side was, and this is probably no one knows this and no one remembers it, and there's a good reason, I was an assistant basketball coach at Swarthmore for 1 year.
Oh, wow.
While I was taking these math classes, which was kind of fun. Also convinced me that probably coaching basketball is not the right thing for me. And then I went off to graduate school and worked hard and trying to become an economist.
And so now, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now?
Sure. So I teach economics at the University of Chicago, and I run the Becker Friedman Institute and the Energy Policy Institute, both at the university as well. And I wake up every day and do what most academics do, which is to try and understand something about the world in a new way, or that helps people understand something about the world that was confusing before. That's one thing. And then a second thing that I really try to work on, and that I try to use the Becker Friedman Institute to facilitate, is that I've come to believe that academics are, and it's not especially novel insight, but that are pretty terrible at communicating outside of academia. Mm-hmm. And so I have this view that lots of great ideas get stuck in academia, ideas that could, in principle, be helpful to the world. And so both these institutes work hard to help economists, and myself included, communicate their ideas in ways that can be more effective to the outside world.
Is there an example of a way that your research, that you've seen specifically, your research has influenced policy in the world?
Yeah. So I guess there's a couple examples. One, I took a year off of being a professor to work in the Obama administration. And there I had the idea that the US government should have something called the social cost of carbon. And that's the value of the avoided climate damage from preventing 1 additional ton of CO2 going in the atmosphere. And that's useful because if you're going to have rules and laws that restrict carbon emissions, those are going to have costs, and you're going to want to know the benefits. And since those benefits are measured in tons, having the social cost of carbon, you can multiply the two together, and then you can compare the benefits and the cost. So that's one thing. I had that idea, and then I led a process in the government to set that. And so now there is a US government social cost of carbon. That has been like a continuing source of research for me after I left government, and I'm working big project through something called the Climate Impact Lab to improve the foundation of our understanding and improve our understanding about social cost of carbon. So that's one example. Another example is I've done some research that documents the effects of air pollution, particulates air pollution, on life expectancy. And it's a good example of how I thought, well, we can, knowing the effect of an additional 10 micrograms per cubic meter of particulate matter on life expectancy is like a mouthful, and most people will tune out just from saying that. And so I wrote several academic papers on this, and then I created something called the Air Quality Life Index. And the idea of the Air Quality Life Index is to take the wonkiness and all the econometrics and statistics and data of that work and make it accessible to the world. And so the Air Quality Life Index is a web platform, and you can click on wherever you are in the world down to like the level of the US county or district in India and find out what air pollution concentrations are. And most importantly, how many years longer people would live if that area came into compliance, say, with World Health Organization standards. And so the idea was to take this really wonky thing and turn it into, well, how much longer could I live if we had this, given improvement in air quality?
Yeah, that's something that people can really grasp, like, kind of a tangible way, like, oh, I could live 4 years longer if my air was cleaner, right? Yeah.
And so I think that has been, it's always the process, the path between idea and policy is always a little twisty and serpentine. But that, I think, has been influential in China, which, it's not the only thing that influenced China to lead this kind of massive war on pollution, which they've been leading for the last 5 or 6 years. And also it's had a lot of traction in India, where it's been on the front page of, every major newspaper a couple times usually. And just because it's like such a pinpointed way of describing something that so that people can a really, I think, fundamental relationship for people's well-being, but describing it in a way that they can connect to.
Hmm. I wanted to ask you a follow-up question about your time in the Obama administration. I know he's a fellow Chicagoan and basketball-loving Chicagoan. Did you ever get a chance to play basketball with him?
No, I never
No?
played with
No.
President Obama. It was most of the games were on the weekend, and my family didn't move down with me, and so I would leave every Friday and come back every Monday morning. So I missed that. It was a great feeling of my time in Washington.
Really quickly, I saw your op-ed in the Washington Post talking about incentivizing people to get tested for COVID. Have you seen that strategy become implemented? Is that something that's still relevant today? I know it was published in May, but
Yeah. So I think, so the idea is that what we really need to know, if particularly as we're trying to find a way to balance between economic activity and public health, is it's really important to know what fraction of the population has been infected. And that's especially true for knowing who might be immune, and so who has the antibodies. It will also be important when we try to figure out how to roll out vaccines whenever they arrive. And the problem is that the people for whom we have those tests for are usually volunteers. Those are people who feel motivated to do it. Often that's because they think they've been infected. But that's not what you don't want to know it for just volunteers. You want to know it for the general population.
right.
And so the idea that I had proposed in that op-ed was that we should pay people, and that way we would get a better reading on the spread of the disease in the full population. And so that's actually a research project or experiment that I'm currently running in Chicago. I don't have results to report yet. There's test kits at people's houses right now that they're sending back their blood samples. But I think it's going to be increasingly important, particularly as we kind of search for that seemingly elusive herd immunity rate.
And I know we're coming up on a hard stop, so I just wanted to ask you one last question. Is there any shout outs that you would like to give to any classmates or teammates that may watch or see this interview?
Well, Matt Kennel and Chris McCabe were in this first recruiting class with me. And there will always be a special bond, at least on my side, I hope on their side as well, over that, and like just the years living together. And certainly want to say hi to them, and really all the people I played basketball with. Rob Ruffin comes to mind, Scott Gibbons, Eric DeLue, and many others. So that's in the basketball world. I even had friends up who didn't play basketball. So.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for your time and talking with me today, and I really appreciated it.
My pleasure. And there were many terrible and continue to be many terrible things about COVID. And so I can't say that this is number one on the list, but boy, did the men's basketball team get robbed last year. I was rooting for them to win the NCAA championship. So.
Well, we hope to be back on campus playing again soon, and we hope to see you at a game again sometime.
I look forward to both.